welcome to this special AeroTime interview, which is part of our Aviation in Australia Spotlight Month. My name's Hannah McLeod. I'm an Australian pilot and a contributing editor for AeroTime based in Sydney. Today, I get the privilege to speak with not only an inspirational pilot who's amassed 44 years and 26,000 hours in the seat, but one of the most genuine, caring, and delightful people you could ever come across. Captain Cameron Livingstone, don't smirk, began flying lessons in 1978 at Archerfield, Australia, completing his CPL instructor rating multi-IFR. And then Cam built his hours in charter and night freight before picking up his big break with Sunstate in 1983 as an FO on the Embraer Bandarandi. Qantas soon came knocking, slotting him on the 747 Classic before he earned his command on the 767 just 6 years later. He went on to become check-in trainer on the 747 Classic and 400 series. Cam is also the national coordinator of PAN, the Qantas Pilot Assistance Network program, and is hands down the coolest pilot I have ever met. Cam, thank you for joining us on AeroTime.
Oh, Hunter, it's so good to talk to you. So good to see you again.
Good to see you again too. And I see you've got the range behind you, which I am loving.
I've got a few of the aeroplanes I have flown. I've got, people are wondering what a Bandarandi is these days, I expect, and that's the one just over my right shoulder there.
Yeah.
It's a little aeroplane from Brazil, 18 passengers, my first ever turboprop. Unpressurized, but boy, I made the big time when I flew that.
I have only ever seen one as a shell and not actually all together, but I can imagine with all that put together, it was a weapon of a little aeroplane. It
was solid. It was great. It really was. I loved every minute of that aeroplane. And, PT6s, you can't go past them. That's the Pratt & Whitney PT6 turboprop, just a brilliant aeroplane.
Now, without everyone having to do the mental math, how old were you when you upgraded onto the 7.6?
30.
Which is incredibly young.
Yes, and I wanted to make it. I was just before my 31st birthday, so I can say 30. So it was the month before. We were going through a really good time, though, in the industry. Then there was a lot of expansion. So, that's what happens in the business. If you can ride the wave, it certainly helps.
Qantas at the moment is known for having really, really long upgrade waits. So what's a rough age of someone upgrading now?
To first command to a wide body, as the 767 is considered, the guys are in their late 40s.
Wow.
Mid to late 40s. That will change. It is getting better. It is. As we look down into the next few years, we can all talk about the shortage of pilots and the expansion and the rebound of international travel. It's really going to rocket, I think.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Can you talk me through seniority? So it might be a different term for people in other industries that is watching, but the seniority number is very common in every airline. You get there, you get a number, and then what does that number allow you to do?
I could do it in one word, everything. But I'll be a bit more expansive. So the day you start, you're given a number. I think my original number was 400 and something. We had 24 airplanes then and about 480 pilots, I think. I might be wrong, but something along those lines. We definitely had 24 airplanes. I remember that, all jumbos. That we were the only all jumbo airline in the world. So I started around about the high 400s. What that means is, as you progress or as you have longevity in the airline, your number will decrease. It will become smaller as people ahead of you retire. Now, the smaller your number, it's like bidding at an auction, the more you've got in your pocket. So you bid for holidays, you bid for type changes, you bid for days off, you bid for trips, you bid for promotion. It's everything. It really is. I had a quick glance at the seniority list before speaking to you, just to see, because I couldn't remember how many we have. And the most junior pilot has a seniority number of 2,450.
Wow.
So it's changed a lot since I joined.
And what is your number now?
6. And it's 4 on the long haul side. There's 2 fellas senior to me, but they're over in short haul and they can't come back because they're over 65. So I'm effectively number 4.
Wow. That I've never spoken to anyone with such a small number.
I was, for a brief moment last year a few months ago when I was on the 330, I was number 1 on that fleet. So I was the most senior captain on it for the sort of microsecond I stayed on it.
So it means you can just pick and choose, because the last time I spoke to you, you were doing 330 training and then you were very quickly doing 380 training, which normally,
Yes.
as far as I'm aware, you get locked to a seat for a couple of years, but with the seniority, you can kind of run around.
Well, that was an interesting point in case. Normally, if I had bid for the 330 on normal seniority, I would be locked in for a couple of years. But as you well know, I was flying the jumbo pre-pandemic. And when that shut down, they had to do something with all the jumbo pilots. So they do what we call an RIN, it's a reduction in numbers. And that means we can be placed in other fleets. Now, at that time, the 380 didn't look like it was coming back. And there was only one train leaving the station, and that was the 330. So I did what I call a RIN onto that type. The nice part of being on a RIN is there is no training freeze afterwards. You can be halfway through your training, you can check out, and the next day you can leave.
Wow.
So as soon as they said the 380 was coming back, I said, I'll be having one of those. Thanks very much.
So what happened? Because I heard that Qantas kept 1 or 2 380s and that was it. They got rid of the rest of them. Did they? Did they not? How many are there?
We had 12,
Yeah.
and 2 are sadly being scrapped at the moment, or I should say robbed for parts. They won't be coming back, but we will be bringing back a fleet of 10 380s.
Awesome. That's great news.
It's good news. I mean, if you want to talk about seniority, with my seniority, I only need 1 aeroplane. I don't need a fleet, but that's being very selfish. So 10 means we've got lots and lots of training on the 380 over the next couple of years, which is great. Really,
You're
really.
check-in training on the 380 as well?
No, this is my retirement swan song now. I've got only a few more years to go, and I'm going to pick the eyes out of the roster and do the flying I want to do and just really enjoy it.
As you should. And the 747 compared to the 380, you've spent a lot of time in both now.
When the last 747 left Australia, I don't know if you recall, they did the kangaroo tail off and filmed it and did all of that. And I couldn't bring myself to watch that for a couple of days. I really couldn't. And when I did, I had tears in my eyes. I will always love the 747. I really will. There's no other way to put it. I've spent most of my life on it.
Do you notice a difference between the 100 and 200 and the 400? Do you see much of a difference?
Sure. I mean, in handling, not a lot. I've flown 100, 200, 300 SP and 400. The SP was a little different. It was a sports car. Lots of fun. My favourite in the fleet was EBQ, was a Rolls-Royce Part 200. And for some reason, it just felt like pulling on an old shoe every time I went to fly that. It was so comfortable. But they're all great aeroplanes. The difference, of course, once we got to the 400, was no flight engineer. And that was quite different for me. Mind you, I had some time on the 76 by then, so I was kind of used to that. But I was on the 76, and then I went back to the classic in command. And I was on that quite a few years and check and training on that. So it was quite funny when I jumped in the 400 and we went to start the engines, and I just said start 4, and there was no one there to do it. I mean, that's what the engineer did on the classic. We have to do it all as pilots on the 400. It took me a little while to get my head around, little things like that. But in terms of the actual flying qualities of the aeroplane, no, they're all very similar.
Do you have a level you like to hand fly to? I've heard a lot of people say, they like to hand fly to 10,000 and then they'll disconnect a couple of thousand to go. Or what's your little personal rule?
It was terrific before RBSM airspace came in, because I used to hand fly to top of the climb. But the minute we get into RBSM airspace, you're not supposed to hand fly. So I'd fly it up to sort of mid-20s. And then just prior to commencing descent, I'd disconnect and hand fly descent and approach and landing.
The whole descent?
Yeah. I mean, I loved it. It was an energy management exercise, and it felt so good. And people say, why do you do that? I go, because one day someone is going to come and tap you on the shoulder and say you have to retire and you won't be able to fly this airplane anymore. And that has happened in terms of that airplane. And I can look back and go, gosh, I've had a lot of fun flying that.
What do you'd have to be thinking about retirement now, wouldn't you? You're starting to think about, what are you going to do?
Well, I've done the thing that, you know, you probably shouldn't do. I bought a bit of an airplane or a share in an airplane because I'm not going to stop flying. I've been flying for so long and I just love it. I can think of no other better way to spend my time. So I'll be doing that. A Bonanza A36.
Nice.
I love Beechcraft. It's IFR, which is nice, so we can go touring in it. But I'm not going to finish work, I think. I don't know. I might go back to some ground instructing or something like that because I really enjoyed being around the young people coming through and they seem to think that maybe I know something. I don't think I know that much more than they do, but they like to hear the stories anyway.
And you're a joy to listen to and a pleasure to be around too. So it makes learning a very nice environment.
That's very kind of you to say, so I'm not so sure sometimes when I...
I don't know if you've noticed what's been happening lately. There's a bit of a kerfuffle in Australia at the moment around alliance and the importing of pilots to a country where we have that many unemployed pilots at the moment begging for jobs on anything. A lot of Australian pilots I've noticed have kind of got a bit jack of it and are looking to go overseas. Have you noticed that or spoken to anyone to get a feel on that?
Look, the alliance thing, if it's true, it's very disappointing. You know, I just can't imagine why they would do that. I think it should be careers for the people that are here. In terms of our pilots going overseas, they're not taking jobs away in the States. There's a huge shortage there, so there's no problem there. B, I think it's the most amazing opportunity for them, and you would know that yourself. The sort of flying they'll be doing, the busy, congested airspace, the weather, the terrain, it's the sort of stuff they'll never get here at home, and in good equipment.
Yes.
So you know, best of luck to them. I think it's a fantastic, you know, and I wish it had been around when I was a young fella. You know, it wasn't. You know, we didn't have anything like Alliance when I was young. The aviation industry in Australia was really quite small compared to what it is now.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we go through a couple of really big moments throughout your career that you would have seen and lived through? And the first thing that came to my mind was the demise of the flight engineer. How did someone become a flight engineer? Part A of this question. And second, what happened to them when they got rid of them?
Okay, well, to answer part A, almost every Qantas flight engineer was off the hangar floor.
Okay.
So they had their trade, be it airframes or engines or avionics, and they were selected from there to do flight engineer training. And when you think about that, that's fantastic because they'd worked on these airplanes. They knew them backwards.
Yeah.
So they were an amazing resource. And this is, you know, we're going back when I first started, you know, there were no mobile phones, there was no satellite phone. You could be stuck somewhere and have very limited communication back to base. And you would be relying on a contracting company or a contract engineer to fix the aeroplane. And if we had your flight engineer there, you felt very comfortable, very comfortable. As a second officer, they were fantastic because as a second officer in Qantas back then, you became a restricted flight engineer yourself. So you sat at the panel to relieve the flight engineer. Yeah. So they were great. They taught me so much about the aeroplane. They shielded me from some of the terrible old captains too. They were very good about that. And they were great guys socially. Towards the end, we had some flight engineers come in direct from other companies rather than take them off the hangar floor. Only very few. One in particular, I remember Dave Davison came from British Airways, the most delightful man. So we had some career flight engineers that came, you know, migrated to Australia and came in. It was really, it was a real change when they left. It really was. So some of them retrained as pilots, a few, and some of them have their command now, which is great.
Good.
And there was a deal struck, industrially to ensure they were paid to their normal retirement date for the rest of them.
Yeah. Good.
But yeah, I mean, if I could wave a magic wand, I'd still be flying the Classic with a flight engineer.
All right. Moving into pilot strike. You would have been around through the pilot strike as well. You would have been young, but you would have been there for it for sure.
I was there for it, but we weren't involved, of course,
Yep.
because we were Qantas. That was Ansett and TAA, and at that stage, Qantas and TAA, or Australian Airlines, I think as it was then, hadn't merged. It was a really sad and difficult time for the industry. I had some good friends on the domestic side, and they went through absolute hell. And I'm not going to comment on the rights or wrongs of the issues at play. All I know is that it was very damaging for the industry as a whole. It placed a lot of mistrust amongst the industry. And I found it terribly sad to see foreign carriers. We had Yugoslav Airlines here at one stage coming in and flying the routes. And then once they left, hearing a lot of foreign accents in Australian registered aircraft flying around, knowing that my friends were still out of work.
Yeah.
It was a really tough time. I was fortunate, it's interesting. I was interviewed by then TAA prior to getting into Qantas, and I was given a start date on a fog of friendship. And then a month before I started, they rang me and said, look, we're deferring the course. We'll let you know. It'll be probably 6 months or so. In the meantime, Qantas picked me up. Now, that's a sliding door moment, because I would have gone to them.
Yeah.
I applied to Ansett, East West, TAA, anyone who'd pick me a gig. So I would have been there in '89. So and involved in that. So thank goodness I wasn't. Yeah, it was a really tough time, and there's still. I think it's going now as the generation sort of retires. There's less angst about it, which is a good thing.
9/11. You in the air at that time?
I was actually in Bangkok going in the Classic. We were going to Rome that night. And once again, people can think, God, he's bloody old. But there was no internet and things like that then. We leave there late at night. I normally, and you hear about my personal habits now, try to have a bit of a sleep and wake up a couple of hours before I leave the hotel. And I love a club sandwich and a pot of coffee and sit there and get my head ready to go flying. And I turn on the television to look at the BBC weather, because that's the only sort of opportunity I had to look at it. And of course, I turned to television and I went, oh my God.
Yeah.
It had just happened. And I thought, this is going to be interesting. So we went downstairs, we got on the crew transport, we had a little chat. I got out to the airport, and we went to our office there, and they said, oh, Sydney, I'd like to talk to you. And I thought, yeah, I thought they might want to talk to me. They said, we don't know what's happening. We said, we'll let you go. We're going to let you dispatch tonight, but you can't go beyond the Indian border until you hear from us. And I said, yeah, well, that's fantastic. But I said, we don't talk. I mean, I don't have a sat phone. I've got scrappy HF that we can occasionally get in contact with. So luckily, they had a 400, one of the early 400s going up to London. So they put us in company.
Okay.
So formation flying up, and they were on the sat phone.
Wow.
But it was an eerie flight, because as we taxied out, there was an American, I think it was at that stage, Delta landing in Bangkok. And it was just that they knew that they were going to land, and that was it. They weren't moving anywhere, and this terrible thing had happened in their country. It was the chatter on the airways all the way up, and we could listen to the BBC World Service. We landed in Rome, and yeah, it was an awful time for the industry. And then, of course, it's changed the way we do everything, and that's sad in itself. The security that everyone has to go through now, the bulletproof locked cockpit door. We used to have so many visitors to the flight deck. It was just wonderful, and people sitting up on the jump seat for the landing, all that sort of stuff. it's really changed the industry. It was a terrible, terrible time.
On that, it just made me think. I remember when I was a kid and I used to go up and poke my head in and have a bit of a sneak around, and the pilots were really welcoming and everything was fine. Can you have people come up when the doors are open on the ground, or is that really not a thing?
No. Usually after landing, pre-departure, we're a bit busy.
Okay.
But if we get a request, no problem at all. I mean, I remember going up when I was probably 5 or 6 on the cockpit of a Fokker Friendship and going like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And that probably started me off, I think, because ever since then. And that's what I love seeing, the youngsters come up and be fascinated by it.
Can you talk me through 2005, the release of the 380? Did you ever think you'd be flying it? Do you remember that coming out and it just looking ridiculously enormous?
Yeah, that'll be brief. I haven't got a lot on that, but I'm sure happy to.
Yeah. Do you remember the A380 coming out? Do you remember any particular?
Well, I remember watching it being delayed, and I thought, they're going to give up. It's never going to make it. It's designed by a committee. It's an Airbus. That was terrible, wasn't it? Because look at it now. It's been incredibly successful. Look at Emirates and people like that. Gosh. And I looked at it and thought, that's big, but it's not pretty.
It doesn't have the sleek look of the 747, does it?
No.
It'll never look as glamorous.
And we used to take the mickey out of the guys flying it. We used to go like, they say people start looking like their dog. The same. And now I'm doing it. So now I'm doing it.
What about passenger? Sorry.
It's got great passenger appeal. Yeah, yes, certainly.
It does.
Particularly in the premium
I have
cabins,
never been on one. Yeah.
I've been in the premium cabins and I've been down the back, and I was coming back from Europe on what staff travel's like. And for people that don't know, it's like any seat that's available is great. And as a captain in Qantas, very fortunately, we're entitled to first class if there's a seat there. And I do remember looking on the computer and seeing one seat left in first class out of Dubai. And so I was standing there in the checkout queue, about to see the girl, and I was going like, now what will I have when I get on? Will I have the Neil Perry steak sandwich, or will I have a glass of red or whatever? And then I handed my thing over, and then I heard her on the phone, because they do this data load control, and say, Captain Livingstone's here, blah, 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 and I heard the kilo, and she handed over, and she said, there you go, Captain, 72. I said, no, you said 2 kilo, not 72 kilo. I quite clearly heard you. She said, no, Captain, 72 kilo. No, it's a mistake. Anyway, so I spent the next 12 hours in 72 kilo. It's like any other airplane back there, I can guarantee you that. But in the premium cabins, it's certainly beautiful. Yeah.
Yes. Definitely. I will one day get on them, I'm sure. Passenger space travel, I guess that's the next thing moving on. How do you feel about that? Would you do it?
I would do it in a heartbeat.
You would?
I want to do that before I think that is just so exciting. If I had the money, I'd buy it now. Yeah.
Okay. You get a retirement gift from Qantas, maybe they can buy you a ticket.
No, you don't. No. But I think that's one. I mean, the kids of today will have that opportunity, I've no doubt. And and to be able to be out there and look, the best I've ever done is in the SP at flight level 430 and 43,000 feet. And you can kind of see the curvature of the Earth there, just a little bit. But to be out there in space must be absolutely amazing and humbling. I'd love to do it.
Just do it. You should do it. All right, we've got some quick fire questions before we let you go. Just 5 quickies. Number 1, the aircraft that should still be flying that isn't.
I think every airplane should still be flying. That's my quick answer to that.
Okay.
I just love seeing them all. Yeah.
Aircraft you haven't flown but would like to.
I've always fancied a King Air, a Beech King Air 200. Yeah, I think they're sweet and beautiful.
They look very nice and very sleek. If you couldn't live in Sydney, where would you live?
I love Italy, south of France, or California for the GA. I love the GA in the States.
Okay. Yeah. Apart from flight stuff like headphones and iPads and things, what's always in your flight bag?
Okay, I don't put jewelry, but my son gave me this. Can you see that? It's an aeroplane. sterling silver airplane about 10 years ago, and on the back he had engraved second officer, first officer, and captain.
Cute.
And he got one for himself as well, which he has yet to get engraved. But I always carry that. That's my good luck charm.
Oh, that's lovely.
Goes flying everywhere with me.
Beautiful. That's good. Okay, last one. Controversial. I know you don't want this one. Airbus or Boeing?
I'm always a Boeing man. I know. The Airbus it's good, but my heart never left Boeing.
And that'll be your forced retirement from Qantas.
Thank you, Hunter.
Oh, Cam, it's always a pleasure. That brings us to the end of our interview. Thank you so much for joining us on AeroTime and sharing your story. I love hearing it. I always enjoy speaking with you. Thank you again. I can't wait to catch up with you at some point. I'm sure I owe you a beer. And that brings us to the end of our AeroTime interview. Thank you for joining us. My name is Hunter McLeod, and you've been watching AeroTime. Goodbye.